Tonight, a Sunday showdown. The Supreme Court takes up a religious freedom case over a postal worker's refusal to work on Sunday.
Plus, the battle over the debt ceiling. And on Holocaust Remembrance Day,
we are one people, and one people we shall remain, brought together not only by a painful history, but also by our shared hope-filled future and fate.
Israel marks the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and highlights Iran as an existential threat.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The High Court considers whether to keep the Sabbath holy. Welcome to Faith Nation from our Washington News Bureau. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. Well, Supreme Court justices heard arguments today in a religious freedom case that could have far-reaching implications about religion in the workplace.
The case involves a former mail carrier who refused to work on Sundays because of his Christian faith and observance of the fourth commandment to remember the Sabbath.
Today, Gerald Groff said he chose postal work because there used to be no Sunday mail delivery. When the Postal Service started delivering packages on Sundays, he sought a religious accommodation from his employer, but that ultimately didn't work.
And now it's in the hands of the 9 justices of the Supreme Court. CBN's Matt Galka has the story.
Gerald Groff worked as a mail carrier in rural Lancaster County, Pennsylvania from 2012 until he resigned in 2019. He says he had no other choice after the Postal Service refused his Sunday Sabbath religious accommodation. Groff says initially when the Postal Service started delivering Sunday packages for Amazon, he found agreeable ways to not work on Sundays. Eventually that changed, leading to disciplinary action, and he left the USPS. His lawyers told justices religious accommodations in the workplace need to be observed.
There's no reason religious workers should receive lesser protection than those covered by other accommodation statutes.
Part of the case is the interpretation of a, quote, undue hardship of an employer. A 1977 SCOTUS ruling known as Hardison established that employers don't have to meet religious accommodations if there is even a minimal burden on the business. The Biden administration argued that Groff's absences created that hardship for the Postal Service.
His absences created direct, concrete burdens on other carriers who had to stay on their shifts longer to get the mail delivered. That caused problems with the timely delivery of mail, and it actually produced employee retention problems, with one carrier quitting and another carrier transferring and another carrier filing a union grievance.
Following the oral arguments, Groff and his attorneys seemed optimistic the justices would side with them.
It's important to just stand for what you believe and just follow and hope the court will stand with us today.
No American should ever have to choose between their faith and their job.
And that was CBN's Matt Galka reporting. 3 of the current justices have signaled they are open to revisiting the Hardison decision, and the court's 6-3 conservative majority appears to be more favorable to religious liberty claims.
And here with us now is Carrie Severino, president of the Judicial Crisis Network. Carrie, welcome. So you write in an op-ed for the National Review that this case gives the Supreme Court an opportunity to erase one of its mistakes. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, the Hardiman case, which was referenced earlier, is a 1977 case that just got it wrong in interpreting the statute. The statute says that there has to be an accommodation for religious practice unless there is undue hardship on the employer. And they took those words, undue hardship, and made them the smallest possible hardship still qualifies as undue. So anything more than a de minimis burden, a really tiny burden, is enough for an employer to say, yeah, we're not going to cooperate with your religious obligations. And that's going to be more and more of a challenge because, you know, back when this case was decided, in many of those kind of cases, it was people like who were observing a Jewish Sabbath or Jehovah's Witnesses observing a Saturday Sabbath. And that wasn't most of America. Most of America agreed where they were going to take Sundays off. Now we're in a position where there are very few people who still even observe a Sunday Sabbath. And so there's more and more opportunities where that's infringing on a much broader range of Christians' Sabbath obligations. And so I think it's important that the court corrects that downgrading of our civil rights and religious protections.
Do you think, Carrie, this case will come down to ultimately how the Postal Service characterizes Groff's refusal to work on Sundays as, quote, undue hardship? I guess, they're looking at it from the perspective that the argument can be made that he was not forced to literally surrender his religious beliefs at the office or the factory door.
Yes, but the hardship that they're talking about isn't a hardship on Groff. I think it's pretty clear he has a sincere religious belief that he shouldn't be working on Sundays. That's why he chose the Postal Service. They've changed their position to now have deliveries on Sundays. So the question is it an undue hardship for them? And I don't think anyone argues that it does add something to employers. They're going to have to work around different people's schedules. But we are a nation where not just all employers, but particularly government employers, do have to be respectful of someone's religious beliefs and practice. And that might mean having to work around schedules for someone who observes a Sunday Sabbath, or people who need to wear particular religious garb in the workplace, Muslims who need to pause to pray throughout the day. There's a lot of various practices that our government, in keeping with the First Amendment, needs to recognize, and in keeping with the civil rights laws also is required to recognize.
Carrie, if we zoom out, how could the High Court's ruling on this case have a wider impact on the issue of religious freedom in America?
Well, I think what's a good sign is the majority of the court did see, and in fact, maybe even all the justices, recognize that this de minimis standard, this really minimizing and belittling of the importance of conscience rights, is clearly incorrect. So I'm optimistic that we'll have a broad, at least 6 justices, maybe even all of the justices, recognizing that that standard's incorrect. How far they will go is another question. I think there's some people who are spinning out, sky is falling, businesses are going to be really hamstrung if they have to accommodate employees. But I don't think that's the case. I think in America, we understand that we can respect each other's beliefs, and we can respect. We are a country that for a long time, most businesses were closed on Sundays. And I think that that's not going to signal the end of our economy. There's certainly ways we can be creative and work around that. So I hope that this is just part of the justices recognizing the importance of religious beliefs and a way to live and respect those beliefs in the public sphere.
All right, Carrie Severino, president of JCN, thank you so much for your time and your insights tonight.
Thank you.
A debt limit showdown looming on Capitol Hill. Coming up, why one GOP lawmaker might break ranks from his own party.
Welcome back. With a debt limit crisis looming in Washington, a Republican lawmaker is threatening to vote no on lifting the debt ceiling if his GOP colleagues bring up, quote, unchristian anti-immigrant bills. Texas Congressman Tony Gonzalez emphasizing today the need to couple legal immigration reform with increased border security.
This crisis ends when President Biden signs a bill into law that strengthens border security and protects legal immigration. You'll find we are in support of legal immigration. We are against illegal immigration. We're against the chaos. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for...
The Texas Republican Party recently censured Congressman Gonzalez, claiming his immigration positions, as well as votes on same-sex marriage and gun control, violate party priorities and principles.
Well, joining us now is David Bahnsen, creator of the series No Free Lunch in Defense of Free Enterprise. He's also managing partner and founder of the Bahnsen Group. Welcome, David. Let's start with the congressman's pledge to withhold his vote on the debt ceiling limit vote. That seems to further complicate House Speaker McCarthy's negotiations with the president, while he's also trying to balance keeping his entire conference united. David, is that threat enough to dash a possible compromise over lifting the debt limit ceiling, or was a compromise ever within reach?
It's hard to say. I don't think that we know enough to know where some of the other kind of hardliners are on this issue. Obviously, we know mathematically one vote can't throw things off if there really was consensus one way or the other in a different direction. The problem is that there's not a big margin because it isn't unified. There isn't unanimous consensus on what to do. So Speaker McCarthy has his work cut out for him, but ultimately his objective has always been to get some spending cuts, even if they're largely cosmetic, some form of reduced spending as a trade-off to lifting the debt limit.
Now, David, what are the economic consequences of a U.S. debt default?
Well, there won't be a debt default. And so the answer is it would be awful, but that isn't on the table. Even if they don't lift the debt limit, a debt default is a technical term, and it means the inability to make a principal or interest payment on debt. And there is absolutely no chance, even if they don't issue new debt, meaning they don't lift the limit for new debt issuance, no chance that they would have to not make a principal or interest payment on our Treasury debt. They would have to reprioritize other spending. There were bills that would not get paid, but not a debt default. It just simply isn't on the table, and it's a scare tactic that has been used by some of the left to, I think, improperly characterize what's going on. But that doesn't necessarily, yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, perhaps not a default, but even the last time when it came to brinksmanship, we had a lower credit rating. So won't that affect us somehow if we don't get this meted out?
Yeah, in fairness, there's been 7 times since the 2011 incident you referred to where we also had a delay in extending the debt limit, including actual shutdowns that took place on 2 different occasions. And in neither case was there any lasting impact. In 2011, though, I do not believe that the credit downgrading from AAA to AA plus was entirely about our issue with the debt limit. I think at the time there were issues going on with Europe that largely convoluted that.
I know you have a Wall Street Journal op-ed out this week about your response to media reports that J.P. Morgan has been debanking customers over their political and religious leanings. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one thing that I did not do with my shareholder proposal is demand that they do something pro-Christian or pro-conservative. I simply wanted, as a shareholder in J.P. Morgan, which I am, both for myself personally on behalf of our clients at my firm, ask them to do a study to ensure that their commitments to diversity were including religious and political diversity, that they were not discriminating against people on the basis of their religious or political beliefs. If they were doing so, I think it not only would be wrong ideologically and against the fabric of our nation, but as a fiduciary, they are not supposed to do things that hurt the business. And arbitrarily getting rid of customers for religious reasons would be totally unacceptable. So we're asking them to ensure and do an investigation that those things are not happening.
All right, David Bahnsen with the Bahnsen Group. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you for having me.
Holocaust Remembrance Day, how Israel is marking history's great atrocity by ensuring it never happens again. Next.
Welcome back. Tonight, many are mourning the passing of a giant in Christian ministry. 90-year-old pastor, author, and Christian broadcaster Dr. Charles Stanley died earlier today. For nearly 50 years, Stanley led First Baptist Atlanta, shepherding the church through unprecedented growth with a congregation of more than 15,000 members. Stanley founded In Touch Ministries in 1977 to spread the gospel through media. Between television, podcasts, and online daily devotionals, more than 115 million homes around the world tune into the ministry's teachings weekly. And here with us now for more on the life and legacy of Dr. Charles Stanley is Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, welcome to you. Just right off the bat, your reaction to the passing of Dr. Charles Stanley.
Well, John, it's certainly a sad day for those of us on earth, our loss, but heaven's gain. Just a remarkable man of God. In fact, last fall, we held our Pray, Vote, Stand Summit at First Baptist Atlanta, and we presented Dr. Stanley with our Leadership Award just for his lifelong commitment to preaching the Word of God, which is our focus in making sure that Word can go out. Well, he preached it literally to millions of people around the world, and his life has touched a lot of people.
As you mentioned, many remember watching him on TV. Tony, what will you remember most about him?
You know, I am very selective in who I listen to in terms of Bible teachers, and he was one of a handful that I would listen to. And I listened to many and watched many of his sermons when I was younger, and he was preaching there at First Baptist. And one of the things I always remember is a phrase that he would use, and I've used it many times. He would say, "Listen, are you listening?" And people did listen to him because he communicated biblical truth. He was a part of bringing back a biblically based conservative resurgence of the Southern Baptist Convention, serving 2 terms as president there, 40 bestseller, New York Times bestselling books. I mean, he was a communicator, but he communicated truth. He never shrunk back from talking about biblical truth and its application to the world in which we live. And I tell you, we need more pastors that would follow in the line of Dr. Charles Stanley, preaching the Word of God and its application to the world in which we live.
Like you, Tony, I grew up watching Dr. Stanley every Sunday night with my family. I know, as you well are aware, he pastored First Baptist Church, Atlanta, for more than 50 years. Can you talk to us about his legacy, both as a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, as a local pastor, but also his world-renowned status as a Christian leader, and as you mentioned, the author of 40 to 50 Christian books?
Well, it's still a remarkable church, and Dr. George, who is an amazing man himself, coming in behind Dr. Stanley, who built First Baptist Church to the mega church that it was. But to be able to reach so many people, and his focus was on the Word of God. And I think, again, he models the way that pastors can communicate biblical truth in a way that draws people in, but does address the issues of our day. I mean, he spoke to the issue of human life. He spoke to all of the cultural issues because he did it through a biblical perspective. And in his teaching, as you said, it reached around the world, but it has left a legacy and I think a benchmark for pastors in the United States and elsewhere to preach the Word of God. It was all centered on the Word of God.
Tony, just a few seconds left, but if you would, what was he like as a person?
Very gentle, kind, soft-spoken, and just a pleasure to be around. Very encouraging. He was a very encouraging man, and a humble, I would describe him as, but effective, very effective. It never worked for him, but observed his ministry and the effectiveness of his ministry and the reach of that ministry, and it honored God, and we honor him for that.
Oh, as you mentioned, Heaven's Gain. Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council. Great to have you on tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tony.
Well, today marks Holocaust Remembrance Day, and as Israel pauses to reflect on history's great atrocity, it also faces an ongoing threat from Iran.
Which is why many in Israel noted the visit of a prominent Iranian coinciding with the day's commemorations. Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl reports from Jerusalem.
Sirens blared and Israel stood still on Tuesday, as it has since 1959, to mark Holocaust Martyrs and Heroes Remembrance Day. Known in Hebrew as the Shoah, Israel's remembrance began Monday evening at Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, marking the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising.
We are one people, and one people we shall remain, brought together not only by a painful history, but also by our shared hope-filled future and fate.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu used the solemn backdrop to remind the world of the threat Iran poses to the Jewish state.
The victory of the past does not alone guarantee the victory of the future. That is why we firmly fight any nuclear agreement with Iran, which would pave its way to nuclear weapons. For the same reason, we fight aggressively against Iran's terrorist branches around us.
And this year, a special visitor also stood with Israel, the exiled Crown Prince of Iran, Reza Pahlavi. He tweeted, "We are very happy to be here and are dedicated to working toward the peaceful and prosperous future that the people of our region deserve. From the children of Cyrus to the children of Israel, we will build this future together in friendship." Each year, Holocaust survivors participate in the ceremony by lighting 6 torches in memory of the 6 million Jews murdered by Nazi Germany and its cohorts.
This is the newest exhibit at Yad Vashem. It's called The Book of Names,
and it contains the names of 4,800,000 Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust. Ephraim Moll lost both of his parents at Auschwitz and showed us their names in the book.
This is the name, Mor Ribin, of my father.
He told CBN News about the Jewish family that adopted him and the Christian woman in Paris who saved them. 86-year-old Robert Bonfil lit one of the candles. He showed us the name of his grandfather in the book.
Here is the name of my grandfather, David Israel, Athens, Greece, place of death unknown.
His family was saved by Christians in Greece.
The Archbishop of the town, his name was Ezekiel. He was very, very friendly of us and saved my father and us.
Bonfil's 26-year-old grandson, Captain Noam Kolb, accompanied him.
The lesson I learned from the Holocaust is the importance, from the one hand, the importance of having a state as Israel, a Jewish state, as an asylum for all the Jews all over the world. But from the other hand, the importance of treating the best way all the people, all human beings, because we're all humans and we can't let never such a horrible thing occur again.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Yad Vashem, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Julie. From the brink of death back to the gridiron, the miraculous return of the NFL's Damar Hamlin, next on Faith Nation.
Finally tonight, 4 months after Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin suffered cardiac arrest during a Monday night football game, the NFL star is fully cleared to play again, and he is not wasting time.
The 25-year-old has been participating in off-season workouts this week at the Bills' practice facility. During a press conference today, Hamlin said he's thankful to be alive.
The wild moment is every day, just being able to wake up and just take deep breaths and live a peaceful life, to have a family, to have people that are around me that love me and that care about me, and for those people to still have me in their lives. You know, they almost lost me. Like, I died on national TV in front of the whole world. The biggest blessing of it all is for me to still have my people and my people still to have me.
Bills general manager Brandon Beane adding that Hamlin is in a great headspace to make his return to the gridiron. And no matter how he performs on the gridiron, that man has an amazing testimony.
An amazing testimony. He inspired the nation.
That's right.
Yeah, amazing.
A reminder, miracles still do happen.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for Faith Nation.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.